They say museums are full of dead things. That never bothered me, until I took a job watching them at night. It started with a crumpled flyer stuck to the window of a gas station just off Route 85, right before the snow started to fall. Night security needed. Dead Hollow Historical Museum. No experience required. Must be reliable. Must be alone. The pay was better than average. No interviews over the phone. Just show up. I had nowhere else to be. The drive to Dead Hollow was a quiet one, surrounded by endless fields of white and jagged trees reaching like black fingers out of the snow. The town itself was little more than a diner, a liquor store, and a gas pump that clicked every 10 seconds, even when no one was using it. The museum sat a mile past the last house, half buried in fog, and older than anything had a right to be. It didn't look like any museum I'd seen before. The building was made of stone, dark and cold, like it had been dragged out of Europe in a nightmare. No neon sign, just a carved wooden plaque near the heavy oak doors. Dead Hollow Historical Archive and Curiosities. I knocked. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, it smelled of dust and cedarwood. Low lights flickered along the hallway like gas lamps, even though I knew they were electric. Taxidermied animals with too many eyes stared at me from glass boxes. I passed an exhibit with a full-size guillotine, and something that looked like a human skeleton with wings. I was starting to wonder if I'd made a mistake when a voice cut through the silence. "You must be Alexandro." I turned and saw him standing beneath a hanging oil painting. Tall, lean, with perfectly combed silver hair and a smile that felt too wide for his face. He wore a dark turtleneck and a museum badge that simply read, "Liam, Curator." "That's me," I said, trying not to stare too long at the weird wax figure slumped behind him. "Come," Liam gestured. "Let's talk in my office." The museum doesn't like when people linger near the exhibits after hours. I followed him through winding halls lined with rusted surgical tools and shattered portraits. His office was warm, cluttered, and smelled like old books and clothes. I noticed a grandfather clock in the corner that ticked backward. "So," he said, folding his hands on the desk, "you're here for the night guard position?" "Yeah," I nodded. "I've done security work before. I'm reliable, quiet. I don't mind long nights." Liam's eyes twinkled like he knew something I didn't. "Good. We require a certain kind of discipline here." He opened a drawer and slid a single sheet of paper across the desk toward me. The top read, "Rules for Night Security, Dead Hollow Museum." There were 12 rules. Handwritten. Some were underlined in red ink. 1. Greet the wooden statue in the East Hall when you begin your shift. He doesn't like to be ignored. 2. Do not enter room 6 after midnight. No exceptions. 3. If the phone rings more than 3 times, do not answer. Let it go to voicemail. 4. Between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., avoid looking into any mirrors. 5. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, ignore it. It's not for you. And so on. I raised an eyebrow. "Is this a joke?" Liam smiled again. Only this time it didn't quite reach his eyes. "No, it's not. You seriously expect me to believe this stuff?" "I don't expect belief," he said calmly. "Only obedience. Break the rules if you want. Most guards do once. They don't last long." I couldn't tell if he was messing with me, or if he really believed it. Either way, something about the way he looked at me told me I shouldn't laugh. "You'll be alone in the building," Liam continued. "There are cameras, of course, but the footage isn't always reliable. If anything feels wrong, follow the rules. That's your only job." I stared at the list again. Wax figures, knockings, mirror avoidance. It sounded like something out of a ghost story, but I'd seen worse. I'd lived through worse. "How many guards have you gone through?" I asked. He paused. 7. In the last 9 months. "Why?" "They broke the rules." Silence stretched between us like an open grave. Finally, I shrugged. "Fine. I'll play along. When do I start?" Liam stood. "Tonight. Sunset is at 5:42. Be in uniform by then. And one more thing." He handed me a keyring, old, heavy, with tags labeled in fading ink. "If you hear your name whispered from behind a locked door, never open it, no matter how familiar the voice sounds." He said it so matter-of-factly that I couldn't tell if he was trying to scare me or warn me. Either way, I took the keys. And at 5:42 p.m., I clocked in. I should have walked away. But some doors, once opened, don't let you leave. I unlocked the side entrance of the museum just before midnight. The old brass key turned with a heavy, reluctant click, like the door itself didn't want to open. A cold gust of wind pushed at my back as I stepped inside, sealing me off from the frozen dark of South Dakota's winter. The lock clicked shut behind me. I was alone. Well, not entirely. The museum hummed with a strange kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind. This one felt thick, like the air was holding its breath. I stood still for a second, letting my eyes adjust. The overhead lights flickered on, one by one, their buzz echoing down the long hallway like distant insects. I pulled out the rule sheet Liam had given me. It was folded and already creased at the edges from how many times I'd looked at it. I read it again, even though I'd practically memorized it by now. Rules for the night shift. Read carefully. 1. Do not use the elevator between midnight and 3 a.m. 2. If you hear tapping from inside the glass cases, ignore it. 3. The wax figure in room 6 must be greeted upon entering. Do not look away from it until you leave. 4. If footsteps follow you, do not turn around. 5. Never enter the basement. Ever. 6. Lights off by 4 a.m., no matter what. 7. Clock out before 5 a.m. No exceptions. At first, I thought it was a joke. Some weird hazing tradition for new guards. But Liam's face was dead serious when he handed me the list. These rules aren't suggestions, he'd said. They're protection. I shoved the paper back into my coat pocket. My boots echoed against the floor as I walked down the main corridor. The exhibits loomed on either side. Painted masks behind glass, rusted tools from forgotten tribes, strange skeletal remains that looked too large to belong to anything native to this earth. There was a map at the security desk near the entrance, but I didn't need it. I'd studied the layout earlier during orientation. My job was simple. Make rounds every hour, check each room, write down any incidents, and don't fall asleep. Easy. I'd done worse in the military. Hell, I'd done worse guarding parking lots. But this place, it was different. At 12:30 a.m., I entered room 6. The air in there was colder, stiller. The room was mostly empty except for a single spotlight shining down on the wax figure in the middle. It was a tall man in a black coat, hands folded neatly in front of him, eyes wide open. Too wide. He stood on a round pedestal, glass eyes gleaming under the light. The figure looked so real, it made my skin crawl. His mouth was almost smiling, like he was holding back a joke he thought I wouldn't get. I remembered rule number 3. I clear my throat. Good evening, I said awkwardly. The figure didn't move. Of course it didn't. It was just wax. I forced myself to keep looking at it, just like the rules said. I took a slow lap around the edge of the room, eyes locked on the figure the whole time. My footsteps felt too loud in that space, like I was walking through a church full of sleeping ghosts. When I backed out of the room, still watching it, I could have sworn its smile had changed. Just slightly. By 1:30 a.m., things got weirder. In the taxidermy wing, I heard tapping. Light, rhythmic tapping from inside one of the glass cases. I froze. I was standing in front of Fox, except it had the legs of a bird and the face of something not quite right. Its eyes were supposed to be glass, but I felt like they were staring. Not blankly, but intentionally, like they recognized me. The tapping continued. Not from that case, but from somewhere down the line. Maybe 2 or 3 cases away. Rule 2. If you hear tapping, ignore it. I took a deep breath and kept walking. I didn't look toward the sound. Didn't even turn my head. The tapping grew louder for a moment, then faded. By the time I reached the storage hallway behind the dinosaur exhibit, I thought maybe I was imagining things. Sleep deprivation, stress, cold air playing tricks. But then something followed me. I heard footsteps. Soft, but deliberate. I turned off my flashlight, heart pounding in my ears. Stood still. The footsteps stopped. I waited. 10 seconds. 15. Then they started again. Closer this time. Rule number 4 screamed in my mind. If footsteps follow you, do not turn around. I walked. Slowly at first, then faster. I didn't run, didn't want to look like prey. I walked all the way back to the front security desk without looking back once. When I sat down, my legs were shaking. I stayed there for the next hour, staring at the monitors. Nothing moved on the cameras, but that didn't make me feel any better. At 3:58 a.m., I turned off all the lights. Rule number 6. The museum dropped into pitch black. My reflection stared back at me from the computer screen, pale and shaken. And just before I clocked out, I noticed something. On the desk next to the logbook was a new piece of paper, one that hadn't been there earlier. It looked old, yellowed at the edges. Handwritten. It simply said, "You forgot to say goodbye to the man in room 6. He noticed. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. When I finally stood up, the light above me flickered once, and then went out. End of chapter 2. Let me know if you want to continue to chapter 3, or want me to write out the list of strange rules in a stylized format you could show inside the story. I don't believe in ghosts. Never have. But the museum has a way of making you question things you once swore by. It was just after 2 a.m. on my third night when I remembered rule number 3. Do not stare at the wax figure in room 6 after 1:30 a.m. If you catch it staring at you, leave immediately and do not return until your next shift. I had read it twice when I first got the paper from Liam. I thought it was a joke, a scare tactic to mess with the new guy. But now, walking through the quiet halls alone, I wasn't so sure. The air was colder that night. My boots echoed louder on the wooden floor. Even my flashlight felt dimmer than usual. I chalked it up to bad wiring and nerves. Room 6 was at the end of the West Wing. Not many exhibits there, just old portraits, some antique clothes and glass cases, and the wax figure. They called him the mourner. He sat on an old Victorian chair, hunched over, face buried in gloved hands. Dressed in black from head to toe, he looked like a man who had lost everything. I passed the room around 1:40 a.m., and something pulled at me. Curiosity, maybe boredom. The kind of itch that comes when you know you're not supposed to do something. I stood in the doorway. The lights inside flickered. The mourner hadn't moved. Still hunched, still grieving, still fake. But something felt off. I stepped inside. Just a few steps, enough to see the face better. My flashlight landed on him, and I could have sworn his hands weren't in the same place as the night before. They looked tighter, as if he was gripping his face. I swallowed. My throat was dry. "You're just a bunch of wax," I muttered. "Chill out." I glanced at the clock above the doorway. 1:46 a.m. I don't know why I kept looking. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that this was all nonsense. Maybe I wanted the thrill. I pointed the beam straight at the mourner's face. And that's when I saw it. His fingers had spread apart. I stepped closer. Between the gaps, I could see one eye. Not glass. Not sculpted. Real. It blinked. I dropped the flashlight. My stomach turned cold. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My feet were frozen, locked to the floor. I stared at him, and he stared back through his fingers. Rule number 3. It screamed in my head. Leave. Leave now. I scrambled backward, nearly slipping as I grabbed my flashlight. I didn't look back. I bolted out of room 6 and didn't stop running until I reached the front security desk. My breathing was loud, my heart louder. I sat in the chair, shaking, staring at the screen that showed the West Wing cameras. Room 6 was empty. Empty. The mourner wasn't there. I stared at the screen. I checked every other room feed. I rewound the footage. Nothing. No movement. No change. No wax figure walking down the hallway. But when I glanced up from the monitors, something new was on the desk in front of me. A piece of paper folded once. I hadn't seen it before. I slowly reached for it. It was the rule sheet. Same as before. Except now, a line had been scribbled at the bottom in shaky handwriting. You looked. It saw you. I sat there for the rest of the night with every light on, refusing to blink for more than a second. I still don't believe in ghosts. But that night, I believed in the rules. It was my 4th night on the job when I met him. The shift had started like all the others. Quiet, cold, encoded in that strange hush that only old buildings seem to know. The kind that settles deep into the walls, where even the air feels like it's holding its breath. I did my usual rounds. North Wing first, then past the taxidermy gallery, avoiding the wax exhibit in room 6 like the plague. I wasn't about to test that particular rule again. Not after what I saw the night before. Not after its mouth had moved. I was halfway down the east corridor when I heard the voice. "You must be the new guy." I stopped dead in my tracks. My flashlight beam jumped with my hand. The hallway had been empty a second ago. "Whoa, relax," the voice said again. "Don't shoot." Out of the shadows stepped a man, late 30s, maybe early 40s, with a heavy-duty flashlight clipped to his belt and a mop of messy brown hair tucked under a faded security cap. He had a tired look, like someone who hadn't slept in years but had made peace with it. "I'm Eddie," he said, offering a hand. "Been working here 6 years. Nights only." I shook his hand, still trying to get my pulse back under control. Alex, I replied. They didn't tell me there was another guard. He gave a short laugh, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, Liam likes to keep us separate at first. Says it's for observation. Don't ask. The guy's weird. That I agreed with. We walked side by side for a bit, boots echoing softly on the old wood. Eddie seemed casual enough, but he kept glancing over his shoulder every few minutes, like he was expecting something to be there. Or maybe he was just used to it. You get the rules? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, some of them are strange. They're not strange, he said quietly. They're warnings. That stopped me. You believe in that stuff. He paused at a corner and turned to look at me, face more serious than before. I didn't, at first. But you stick around long enough, things start happening. Things that don't have explanations. You ever see a statue blink at you? Or hear someone whisper your name from inside a locked glass case? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I've seen 3 guards come and go, Eddie went on. One quit after a week. One disappeared. The other, well, I don't think he quit, but we never found him. Just his key card. And blood. A lot of blood. Something cold curled up in my stomach. Why are you still here then? He gave a hollow smile. Because I think someone needs to be. To keep following the rules. To stop whatever's in here from getting out. I wanted to laugh, to call him paranoid, but part of me couldn't. Not after what I'd already experienced. Not after the whispering mirror or the footsteps behind me in the Egyptian wing that weren't mine. We reached a steel door marked Archives. Eddie unlocked it with a key I hadn't been given. Come on, he said. I want to show you something. Inside was a small room stacked with dusty boxes, old records, and broken display signs. It smelled like mildew and forgotten things. Eddie pulled out a file from the bottom shelf and handed it to me. It was labeled, Incidents, Night Staff. Inside were photos, reports, faded Polaroids of former guards, each with a date. Some had big red XS drawn across their faces. Others had notes scribbled beside them like, Rule 5 broken, vanished in West Stairwell. Rule 12 ignored, lost time, never recovered. I looked up at Eddie. This is real, I said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, and it's only going to get worse. There's something building in this place. Something Liam knows about. That's why he watches us. Why he makes us follow the rules. But it's not to protect us. It's to control whatever's inside. He looked me dead in the eyes then. Don't break any more rules, Alex. And if you hear someone call your name from the dinosaur wing after 2 a.m., don't answer. No matter what it sounds like. He turned and left me there, standing among the dusty files and creeping shadows. I didn't move for a long time, because for the first time since I started this job, I realized something. I might not be getting out of here. Not alive. Not whole. Not human. Not if I keep following the rules. And especially not if I break them. I used to laugh at people who believed in ghosts. Growing up in a rough part of Miami, the only monsters I knew were human. Real things, guns, fists, betrayal. But after 4 nights in that museum, something inside me started to shift. Not because I believed, but because I couldn't explain what I saw. That night started like the others. Cold coffee, silent hallways, a flashlight that always seemed to flicker when I needed it most. I walked my usual patrol route, East Wing, the atrium, the storage rooms, and kept my distance from room 6 like the rules told me. Everything felt normal, or at least, museum normal. Until I heard the sound. It started like a whisper, a low hum under my boots, like the floor was breathing. I stopped walking, held my breath, and listened. There it was again, muffled voices, beneath me. At first, I thought it might be pipes or old heating vents. But no, the sound was rhythmic. It had a pattern, like a conversation happening just out of reach. It came from under the floorboards near the western stairwell, the one that led down into the basement. The basement had its own rule. Do not enter the basement after midnight. Ever. I had read it at least a dozen times. I had even joked about it with Eddie once. You think there's a monster down there? I'd asked. He didn't laugh. Now, standing above those creaking steps, I wasn't laughing either. I looked at my watch. 12:41 a.m. I should have walked away, gone back to the break room, made another pot of burnt coffee, and waited out the night. That's what a sane man would do. But I wasn't sane. Not anymore. Not after the wax figure blinked at me 2 nights ago. Not after I found Eddie staring at the taxidermy bear, like it was whispering to him. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam trembled as I held it, not from the batteries, but from my hands. The basement door was locked, or at least, it was supposed to be. I turned the handle. It clicked open. My heart started pounding harder than my boots against the steps. The air grew colder with each step down, and the light didn't reach far. It just illuminated the next few feet in front of me, like the darkness swallowed the rest whole. The voices grew louder, still muffled, still impossible to understand, like they weren't meant for human ears. At the bottom, I found a concrete hallway lined with rusted metal shelves and crates sealed shut with iron latches. Dust floated like snow in the air. Cobwebs hung low from the ceiling. Then I saw the door. It wasn't like the others. This one was made of dark wood, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Circles, eyes, twisting shapes like vines or veins. My flashlight flickered, then dimmed. I smacked it with my palm. It came back, but weaker. The voices stopped. Silence, thick and sudden. That silence was worse than the noise. I stepped closer to the door, drawn to it. My hand reached out. I didn't tell it to. Just before my fingers touched the handle, something on the other side scraped, like nails on stone. Then a thud. Then another. And then a whisper. Right behind me. Don't. I spun around, flashlight beam shaking. No one. I heard breathing. Slow. Wet. Right beside my ear. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was at the top of the stairs again, slamming the basement door shut behind me and jamming a chair under the handle like that would do anything. My lungs were on fire. My hands were shaking. I don't know what's behind that door, but it's not a storage room. And tonight, for the first time, I think I understand. The rules aren't there to control us. They're there to protect us. I wasn't supposed to be in the locker room that night. Technically, I wasn't breaking any rules. The list didn't say anything about the staff area, but something about that hallway made my skin itch. The flickering fluorescent lights. The way the door to the locker room creaked open like it had been waiting for me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even though I knew I was alone. At least, I hoped I was alone. I told myself I just needed to check on something. Maybe I left my flashlight charger in there. Maybe I just needed to get away from the whispering sounds near the Victorian exhibit. But really, I went looking for Eddie. He hadn't shown up for his shift. No call. No text. No voicemail. Just gone. I found his locker near the back. It had duct tape on the handle and a faded sticker or cartoon skull. It wasn't locked. I hesitated for a second. I knew this was a boundary, maybe not a written rule, but a personal one. Don't mess with other guards' things. Don't dig too deep. But I opened it anyway. The smell hit me first, like old paper, mildew, and something faintly metallic, blood, maybe. Inside was a tangle of junk, an empty thermos, a crumpled hoodie, a bag of sunflower seeds, and a notebook. Thick, black, leather-bound. Heavy in my hands. It didn't have a title on the front. Just a deep scratch across the cover, like it had been clawed by something. I sat on the bench and flipped it open. The handwriting was messy, rushed. The first few pages were normal, guard logs, hours, which cameras were working, odd maintenance notes. But by the fifth page, everything changed. Night 17. The wax figure moved again. I know I didn't imagine it. I locked the door to room 6. When I came back, it was open, and the figure was facing the opposite direction. I didn't break the rule. I didn't look directly at it. I think it's testing me. I flipped the page. Night 22. I heard crying. Childlike. It came from the vent near the Egyptian sarcophagus. Rule number 7 says to ignore it, but my ears started bleeding when I tried. It wants attention. My mouth went dry. I read faster. Night 29. I found a new rule. It wasn't on the list. It was scratched into the underside of my desk. If the man in the red suit asks what time it is, lie. I saw him last night. He smiled. I told him it was 3 a.m. He nodded like I passed a test. But I don't know what happens if I tell the truth. Night 33. Liam knows. He's not just managing this place. He's conducting something. A ritual. A summoning. I saw him with the symbols again. He was painting them under the floorboards in the fossil exhibit. Said it was for preservation. That bastard is using us. The entries became more scattered, the handwriting slanted, some pages torn out. Then this one. Night 40. There's something underneath the museum. I heard it moving. Not footsteps. More like breathing. Heavy. Slow. Hungry. The rules aren't just for protection. They're containment. We're not guarding the museum. We're keeping something in. I slammed the notebook shut. My hand was shaking. I looked around the empty locker room. The humming lights. The buzzing silence. The way shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far across the floor. I checked the date on the last entry. Eddie wrote that 6 days ago, and now he was gone. I tucked the notebook under my jacket and stood up. I didn't want to be in that room any longer. As I turned to leave, I noticed something scrawled on the inside of Eddie's locker door. It was faint, like it had been etched with a nail. If you're reading this, it's too late to quit. I didn't sleep the next morning. I stayed awake on my couch, the notebook beside me, the rules spread out on the coffee table. I reread them all, every word. And for the first time since I took the job, I realized something. These rules aren't meant to keep us safe. They're meant to keep the thing inside the museum from waking up. And something tells me we're running out of time. I had always known there was something off about Liam. He wasn't like the other people I had met in Dead Hollow. He wasn't like any man I had ever encountered, really. He had this way of looking at you. Eyes too calculating, always too calm. He smiled often, but there was something cold in it, like he knew something you didn't. And it started to eat at me. I was getting deeper into the mystery of the museum, piecing things together. The exhibits weren't just exhibits. They were traps. The rules weren't just rules. They were chains. And Liam wasn't just the curator. He was the keeper of all the darkness buried under the museum's walls. But I didn't have proof. Not yet. That night, the usual cold chill settled over the museum. The lights flickered above me in that strange way they always did after midnight, casting shadows that seemed to breathe. I had to get into Liam's office. I had to find the truth. My instincts screamed that the answers were locked in there. I had already spent hours wandering the museum, pretending to patrol, but I had spent more time lurking outside his office door, watching for the right moment to slip in. Liam had a weird schedule. He never seemed to stick to the usual hours of anyone else. He liked to pop in at odd times, check on things when he thought no one was looking. When I finally saw the light in his office flicker off, I slipped from the shadows and pushed the door open slowly. The hinges groaned quietly, protesting the motion. The office was dark, save for the dim glow of the moon through the dusty windows. I was careful. I had to be careful. I had no idea what I was going to find, but I knew I couldn't leave without something to hold on to. My hand shook as I fumbled with the desk drawers, finding them locked. Of course, they were locked. Everything here was locked, buried, hidden. I noticed a set of old keys on the side of the desk and grabbed them. I felt a thrill of fear creeping up my spine as I unlocked the top drawer. Inside were papers, pages of correspondence, some of them old, stained with yellowing edges. But it wasn't the letters that caught my attention. It was the books. Dozens of them, leather-bound and heavy. Some were written in languages I couldn't recognize, others filled with strange symbols and diagrams. I picked one up, careful not to touch the pages too much. The weight of it was significant, unnerving, even. There was a coldness to it that made my skin crawl. I flicked through the pages quickly, the words blending together in an almost hypnotic way. And then I saw it. A drawing, sketches of mannequins. Wax figures, one after another, drawn with a precision that made my stomach tighten. They looked like something out of a nightmare, each one standing eerily still, but with an unsettling sense of life in their eyes. I set the book down, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no more. But as I turned back to the desk, something caught my eye. A photo, old and torn, stuck beneath the papers. I picked it up carefully, holding it in my hands like it might turn to dust at any moment. The image was black and white, faded with age. But it wasn't the age of the photo that caught me. It was the face staring back at me. Liam, but not like I had ever seen him before. This was a picture of him as a young man, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. But it wasn't just the people that caught my attention. It was the setting. The photo was taken in the basement, the very place I had been warned never to go. In the background, I could make out old, rusted shackles and stone walls that looked like they'd been there for centuries. I felt a chill spread through me as I realized the photo was taken before the museum had even been built. This place had a history far darker than I had ever imagined. I glanced back at the desk. The pieces were falling into place. Liam wasn't just obsessed with the artifacts. He wasn't just curious. He had inherited this madness. I looked down at the letter I had found earlier, The one written in frantic scrawls by another guard who had clearly broken the rules and paid the price for it. The guard had mentioned a ritual, a convergence, and the name Liam Cray had been written all over the letter in red ink. I barely had time to process it all when the door behind me clicked open. My heart stopped. Liam stood there, framed in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just stood there, as if he had been expecting this. "You shouldn't be in here, Alexandro," Liam said, his voice low and smooth, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. "But I suppose you're beginning to understand now." I stood frozen, the photo still in my hand, my pulse hammering in my ears. I couldn't speak. My mind was racing too fast to catch up with the reality of what was happening. Liam stepped inside, his footsteps quiet on the wooden floor. The shadows in the room seemed to curl around him, clinging to his frame like they were made for him. "You've been asking too many questions," he continued, his voice soft, almost affectionate. "You've been poking at something that's far older and far darker than you realize. The rules were never meant to keep you safe, Alex. They were meant to contain you, to keep you from seeing what's really lurking in this place." I looked at the photo again, the weight of his words sinking in. "You've known, haven't you?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. "This is all about you, isn't it?" Liam smiled, but it wasn't the smile I'd grown used to. It was something different, something that made my skin crawl. His eyes, cold and unblinking, never left mine. "Yes, Alexandro. It's always been about me. But now it's about you too." I dropped the photo, my hand trembling. I had no idea what to do next. Liam took a step forward, his smile widening. "You're part of this now. There's no turning back." And in that moment, I understood the truth. The museum wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and Liam was the one pulling the strings. It was far too late to escape. I didn't expect Eddie to vanish. It was the strangest thing. One moment he was here, smoking his usual cigarette outside the back door, muttering about how the night shift had become too weird even for him. The next, he was gone, like he'd never been there at all. I should have paid attention when he told me to stick to the rules, because things were about to go sideways. He'd said it jokingly, almost as if he was warning me, without meaning to. But I hadn't thought much of it then. Now, I was starting to feel the weight of every strange incident I dismissed as my imagination running wild. The museum that night was quieter than usual, dead quiet, like the kind of silence that presses on your ears. I made my rounds, checked the security cameras, and kept my eye on the clock. Midnight passed, and with it, the feeling that something was off seemed to grow thicker, like the air itself was waiting for something. That's when I noticed the first sign that something was really wrong. I was standing near the wax exhibit in the East Wing when I caught a flicker on the security monitors. It was just a flash at first, something moving quickly through one of the corridors on the top floor. I zoomed in. There was Eddie, or at least, there was something that looked like him. His back was turned to the camera, and his posture was all wrong. He was too rigid, too stiff. He wasn't walking so much as gliding. He passed through the hallway so quickly, it seemed almost unnatural. I tried calling out to him on the intercom, but the system crackled and died. Static filled the air instead of his voice. I ran upstairs, my boots clapping loudly against the wooden floor, echoing through the empty halls. My heart hammered in my chest, each thud louder than the last. What the hell was going on? The top floor was dark, too dark even for the museum's usual gloom. I flicked on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the shadows, revealing rows of dusty relics, ancient suits of armor, and paintings whose eyes always seemed to follow me. But no Eddie. I reached the end of the hallway where the security footage had shown him disappearing. A low hum filled the air, like the walls were breathing. And then I saw it. On the far wall, the painting I'd always avoided, the one with the thick golden frame, was tilted slightly. It had never been like that before. I walked toward it, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. The closer I got, the more the air felt like it was pressing in on me. When I got to the frame, I hesitated for just a second, but curiosity gnawed at me. I moved it aside. Behind the painting, there was a door. I'd never seen that door before. A cold draft escaped from the crack at the bottom, and the light of my flashlight flickered as if protesting the discovery. It didn't take a genius to realize that this was where Eddie had gone. I pushed the door open. The air in the room beyond hit me like a punch to the gut. Thick, musty, and stagnant. The space was small, almost claustrophobic. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight as I swept it across the walls. A small, old desk sat in the center of the room, covered in stacks of papers. And then I saw it. The surveillance monitor, the one I hadn't seen before. It was on, displaying footage of Eddie. Except this footage was different. It was moving. He was still there, standing in the hallway, but his body was wrong. The limbs were too long, his face too pale. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at something else, something out of frame. A chill crawled down my spine, the kind that makes you want to run, but leaves your feet frozen in place. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things, but it felt like the shadows in the room were stretching toward me. I fumbled for the door handle, but before I could turn it, I heard a soft voice from behind me. Eddie's voice. "Alex." I spun around, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. But there was nothing there. Nothing but the low hum that now seemed to vibrate through the walls. I hurried back to the monitor and rewound the footage, watching as Eddie passed by the camera again. But this time, something was different. The frame caught his face. His eyes were wide and glassy, staring right into the lens. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't seeing the camera. He was looking directly at me. The door slammed shut behind me, and the hum grew louder, as if the building itself was waking up. I ran back through the hallway, my heart pounding, only to find the doors to the museum locked. I had no idea where Eddie had gone, but I had this sinking feeling that I was next. I hadn't meant to go digging through Liam's office, but something gnawed at me that night. Something in the air, something heavy that I couldn't shake off. The museum felt different. It wasn't just the strange noises or the cold spots that kept creeping up on me. No, there was something deeper. The walls seemed to whisper my name, and no matter how much I told myself to stay rational, I couldn't ignore the growing feeling that the rules had a purpose far darker than I could imagine. I had learned by now to trust my instincts, and tonight they were screaming at me to find out what Liam was hiding. The office was exactly as I had left it that morning. Neat, almost unnervingly so. I stood in the doorway, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light spilling in from the hallway. The desk was made of dark oak, the kind of wood that seemed too solid to be real, like something carved from a tombstone. The clutter on top was sparse: old newspapers, some binders, a dusty lamp, and, curiously, a small iron key on a brass chain. My heart skipped at the sight of it. It seemed out of place, yet oddly familiar, like something I'd seen in one of the old photographs in the archives. I made my way over to the desk, careful to keep my steps silent. The rules had already started to feel like chains around my neck, but tonight I was going to break them, just a little. Just enough to understand what Liam was really up to. I opened the drawer slowly, holding my breath as it creaked open. Inside, I found what I had been hoping and fearing to find: a thick leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked, as though it had been handled more times than it should have. There was no title on the spine, nothing to identify it, except the initials DC embossed in gold on the front. I didn't waste a second. I opened it. The first few pages were nothing but hastily scribbled notes, a mix of sketches and wild sentences, barely legible. Some of it was in English, but most of it was in a language I didn't recognize, symbols and characters that seemed to squirm on the page, as though they were alive. I ran my fingers over the pages, feeling the paper's texture. It was older than anything else in the museum, older than any of the artifacts I'd seen. I turned the page. The next entry was different. It wasn't written in the same frantic scrawl, but in neat, precise handwriting, like someone who was very used to being in control. "It has been years since we last spoke, but I have not forgotten you. No matter how much the world outside calls for my attention, I know where my true purpose lies. There is more to this museum than the eyes can see. The truth hides beneath layers of time and stone." My stomach twisted as I read. Something in my gut told me I was crossing into dangerous territory, but I kept reading. "The statue in room 6 has shown me what lies beyond. I can hear its whispers in my dreams, urging me to continue. The ancient ones are waking. Their hunger is insatiable. I can feel it, pulling at the edges of my soul. I must feed them before they consume me." I paused. My fingers gripped the edges of the journal harder. The mention of room 6 sent a chill down my spine. I'd seen the statue. I'd seen its eyes, how they always seemed to follow me, no matter where I stood. Was this what I was waiting for? Was this what Liam was waiting for? I turned the page, my pulse quickening. The next entry was dated nearly 100 years ago. Dr. Cray's theories have brought us to the final stage of the experiment. The veil is thin now, thin enough to touch. We must act quickly, before it tears entirely. We are not ready for what lies beyond. The patients, there is something wrong with them. They no longer speak of this world. The handwriting here was sloppier, like the writer was rushing. And then, my heart nearly stopped. We have found the doorway beneath the asylum. The entity is hungry. It whispers for us to come closer. We must obey. I swallowed hard. My hand shook as I flipped through the pages, searching for more. I could feel my breath quicken as the entries became more erratic, the handwriting less controlled. Desperation leaked from every word. Tonight, we will open the door. Tonight, the true work begins. The final page was filled with a diagram, an intricate pattern of symbols arranged in a circle. In the center, there was a drawing, vague at first, but unmistakable once I looked closer. It was a figure, long-limbed, with eyes that seemed to burn through the page. Its mouth was wide open in a scream, or perhaps a laugh. It didn't look human. It didn't look like anything that belonged on this earth. I had seen that symbol before. It was on the walls in the basement. I slammed the journal shut. The sound echoed through the office, too loud in the silence of the museum. I stood there, breathing heavily, staring at the book in my hands. This wasn't just about a haunted museum. This wasn't just about the artifacts or the rules. It was about something much older, something that had been waiting beneath this place for far too long. Liam wasn't just a curator. He was the heir to a legacy of madness and power, a legacy that had been passed down through the generations, a legacy that would stop at nothing to break the seal and release whatever was buried here. I knew one thing now, for certain. I wasn't going to make it out of this place unless I found a way to stop him. But I had no idea how. I glanced back at the journal, the iron key resting beside it. There was something more I needed to understand, something I had missed. But I was running out of time, and whatever I did next, I had to be ready. I was already halfway down the hall when I noticed the clock on the wall. 12:02 a.m. The second hand seemed to drag, unwilling to make the usual tick-tock movement. It felt like the museum was holding its breath, like it was alive, waiting. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. The plan I had been building for days felt fragile, ready to shatter. I had spent the last few nights poring over every scrap of information I could find, piecing together the past of this place like a puzzle. Everything pointed to one conclusion: the rules. They were the barrier. Break them, and there was nothing left to stop whatever Liam had been preparing to bring through. Something dark, something old, and something that would devour us all. I checked the time again. 12:03. Time was running out. The basement was the heart of it all. I had seen the markings on the floor, the bloodstained walls, the occult symbols drawn in places I couldn't explain. Tonight, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to destroy whatever was down there before Liam completed the ritual. I couldn't let it happen. I could hear the hum of the lights above, the faint buzz that echoed in the stillness of the museum. The building felt too quiet, like it was waiting for something. I passed the wax figures in room 6. I couldn't help but glance at the one that had shifted its position the night before. It was still, too still. I didn't know what would happen if I turned away from it again. I kept walking. I took the stairs down into the basement slowly, deliberately. My heart hammered in my chest, my breath tight in my throat. The air down here was thick with the scent of mildew, and something heavier, decay maybe. The walls seemed to close in around me, pressing closer with every step I took. It was as if the basement didn't want me here, as if it could feel me, hear me. I reached the bottom of the stairs, and the world shifted. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath fogging in front of me. I stepped forward, the familiar creak of the floorboards under my boots echoing in the silence. I had to focus. I could feel something in the air, an electric pulse, like the moment before a storm breaks. I had to keep moving. The room ahead of me was dark. Even the light from the stairs didn't seem to penetrate beyond the threshold. I knew this was it. This was the place. The ritual chamber where it would all end. There were symbols carved into the stone walls, circles within circles, twisted patterns that made my stomach churn just looking at them. At the center, the floor was covered in what I could only assume was blood. It was still wet, and the stench made me gag. The air tasted foul down here, like something ancient and suffocating. And then there was the altar. I had only seen it once before, in the journal I'd stolen from Liam's office. It wasn't just a table. It was a thing, an object that wasn't meant to be touched. Its surface was slick, the wood dark and shiny with age. On top of it lay something I couldn't look away from, an ancient, tattered book, its pages curled and stained with time. The book that would open the way. The book that had cost so many their lives. I knelt down and pulled the old journal from my bag. It was filled with Liam's ancestors' notes, twisted, cruel things about summoning the dead, breaking the walls between this world and whatever was beyond. I knew what had to be done. I wasn't supposed to be here, but I had no choice now. I read the incantations from the journal in a low whisper. Each word felt wrong in my mouth. Each syllable made the room feel heavier, the air colder. Something stirred deep in the shadows, just beyond my sight. I heard footsteps. I froze. They were slow, deliberate, soft, like someone or something was walking just out of my line of vision, following my every movement. I didn't dare look behind me. I could feel the presence, like a weight pressing on my back. And then I heard him. "Alex." Liam's voice was calm, too calm. It was like he was savoring this. "I knew you'd come." I turned, finally, but he wasn't alone. The light from the hallway caught his face, but it wasn't him anymore. Not entirely. Liam's eyes were wide, dark, black as coal. His lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't a smile of satisfaction. It was something more predatory. "You don't understand, do you?" He stepped closer, his shoes barely making a sound against the concrete floor. "This is bigger than you, bigger than me. You're too late, Alex. It's already begun." His hands twitched, and I saw the book in his grasp. It was already open. The pages turned by themselves, as if something unseen was pushing them. I could feel the pull. It was magnetic, drawing me toward it. And I could hear it now. The whispers, faint at first, but growing louder, thrumming beneath the earth. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Liam, stop. This isn't what you think it is. This isn't control. This is destruction." He didn't reply. He just stared at me, that dark smile still on his lips. Then, without warning, he dropped the book to the ground. The ground shook. The air vibrated with a low hum that rattled my teeth. I could hear the walls groaning, the museum itself seeming to breathe. The shadows stretched, twisted, and something in the corner of the room stirred. I took a step back. "What have you done?" And then the floor cracked open. The darkness spilled out, crawling, slithering. Something broke through the very fabric of the world. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed the lighter from my pocket. The fire was my only chance, the only way to stop it. I flicked the flame, and for a moment, the light seemed to push back the darkness. But just as quickly, the shadows returned, swallowing the flame. The walls around me screamed. "Alex," Liam whispered, his voice hollow. "It's already too late." I didn't hesitate. I turned the gas on the furnace wide open. I smashed the bottle of flammable liquid over the altar. And then I lit the fuse. The fire roared to life, the heat a blistering force. It felt like the whole building was burning with it. Liam screamed as the fire consumed him, his form writhing in agony as the flames tore through him. But it wasn't just him. It was everything. The museum, the ritual, the darkness that had been waiting. I had no time to run. I barely made it to the stairs before the entire museum collapsed behind me. I woke up on the outskirts of town, lying in the snow, my body frozen and bruised. But I knew, deep down, that it wasn't over. The museum was gone, but the rules, they were still out there, waiting for someone else. And I could feel them, like a whisper in the wind. A new place, a new night. The night shift never ends. I can't tell you how long I've been down here. Time has stopped making sense. The walls are breathing. The floor creaks underfoot, but not in a natural way. It's like the museum itself is alive, exhaling, stretching its limbs through the cracks in the stone and wood. The air smells metallic, as if the place is bleeding. I'm in the basement again, the last place I should be. I know that. But after everything I've seen, I know there's no turning back. Liam's words are etched in my mind, cold and unyielding. The 13th night is the final key, Alex. It's not just a ritual. It's the end, or the beginning. Either way, you'll be part of it. The rules, God, those damned rules. They've been keeping something locked away, something ancient, something that could tear the world apart if it set loose. I have to stop it. I have to make sure that the ritual doesn't complete. But I'm starting to realize I might be too late. I step further into the basement, the musty scent of old stone and damp air hitting my nose. The walls are lined with shelves full of oddities, books, jars of strange liquids, unmarked bottles. A few seem to pulse faintly, almost alive, as if they're breathing in rhythm with the walls themselves. In the far corner of the room, the altar sits, covered in symbols I can barely comprehend. It's been here since the beginning, just like everything else in this cursed place. I reach into my pocket and pull out the journal. The last one I found, the one that belonged to the guard before me. The pages are stained with ink, smeared with the desperate hand of a man who saw too much. He didn't make it. I won't either, if I fail. His final entry still haunts me. Burn it. End it. I'm not sure I believe in the supernatural. Not really. But I've seen too much tonight to dismiss it. The lights flicker, then go out completely. For a moment, I feel like I'm suffocating in darkness, the kind that presses in from all sides, tightening around my chest. But then, there it is, an eerie low hum. Not from the lights, but from the walls. From the museum itself. Like it's singing, chanting, calling. I pull myself together. No time to hesitate. The ritual must be stopped. Liam is somewhere in this building, probably waiting for me to make my move. I can almost hear his voice in my head. The final rule, Alex. You've read it, haven't you? I've read it, all right. The one that's always been there, hidden in plain sight. The one that's been circling the edges of my mind. It's simple, really, but it terrifies me like nothing else. If you reach the 13th night, don't clock out. I understand it now. The museum isn't a building. It's a vessel, and I'm part of its ritual, whether I want to be or not. If I leave now, if I clock out, if I walk away, it all goes to hell. The museum gets its way. It wakes, and the world goes dark. I hear footsteps behind me. I freeze, my heart slamming against my ribs. They're heavy, deliberate, echoing in the silence of the basement. But I don't turn. I can't. That's the rule, right? Don't look behind you. I push the thought away. It's not real. It's just my mind playing tricks. It has to be. The footsteps stop. The humming grows louder, filling the room like a living thing. I take a deep breath, steadying myself. I reach into my bag and pull out the vial of chemicals I took from the supply closet earlier. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot I've got. The book I found earlier in Liam's office, some occult tome, mentioned a ritual that could break the seal on this place, could stop the awakening of whatever lies buried here. The chemicals should act as a catalyst, disrupting the ritual. I move toward the altar. The symbols etched into the stone glow faintly, an unearthly light leaking from the cracks. I pour the contents of the vial onto the altar, watching as the liquid sizzles and smokes, sending up a faint, acrid smell. Suddenly, the floor shudders, and the lights above flicker violently. The walls seem to warp, as if reality itself is warping around me. The humming intensifies, becoming a deep growl. I feel the ground tremble under my feet, the pressure building in my chest, pushing against me like an invisible force. Alex, Liam's voice, low, menacing, echoes through the basement. He's here. I don't need to look to know it. I can feel him. I turn, meeting his gaze for the first time tonight. His face is calm, but there's something off, a glimmer in his eyes, something unnatural. He steps closer, his shoes clicking against the stone floor. You should have followed the rules, Alex, he says, his voice smooth, almost mocking. You think you can stop it? You think you can stop me? I don't answer. I don't have time for games. The walls are closing in, the museum alive with energy, with something ancient and hungry. I'm not giving up, I say, barely able to speak over the roar of whatever's about to break loose. I'm ending this. Liam's lips curl into a smile, something almost sadistic behind his eyes. You're too late. It's already begun. And then, I hear it, the loud crack of something breaking in the darkness. The ground shakes violently, throwing me off balance. The walls twist, bending like they're made of paper. The altar cracks open, spilling an unholy light that makes my skin crawl. It's happening. The ritual is reaching its peak. I've already made my choice. I dive toward the fuse box by the wall. With trembling hands, I yank out the wires, setting the fire. The flames lick at the walls, but I don't stop. I pour more chemicals into the altar's cracks, the fire spreading faster, hotter. The ground shakes so violently, I think the museum will swallow me whole. Liam's face twists in rage, but I can barely hear him over the roar of flames and the cracking stone. I look up, and the museum feels like it's screaming, its breath growing faster, louder, more insistent. And then, it all goes silent. The flames rage around me, but it's peaceful. The walls stop trembling. The hum dies down. The air grows still. For a moment, I think I've won. But then, from the smoke, something forms. It's Liam, but not Liam. His face is twisting, morphing, like the flames are burning away his skin. His voice is 1,000 whispers, all calling my name. I told you, Alex. You can't stop it. I close my eyes and brace for the worst. I didn't know how much time I had left. The walls were breathing, the floors were shifting, and the lights had gone from flickering to completely dead. All that was left was the steady, deep thrum that seemed to rise from the museum's very foundation. It felt like the building itself was waking up. Liam was somewhere close by, probably watching. That's what he did. Watch me as I ran around, try to stop the inevitable. But tonight, everything felt different. I could feel the air tightening around me, suffocating. The rules that had been drilled into my head, the ones I'd followed with obedience like a mindless dog, were all lies. I had to burn it down. I wasn't going to let whatever was coming through take hold of this world. I stood in front of the huge stone altar in the basement, an altar that had been built long before this museum existed. The ground beneath it was cracked, like it had been waiting for centuries. I'd found the materials I needed: gasoline, matches, anything flammable. The plan was simple: burn it all down, wipe the slate clean, and stop whatever ritual Liam was trying to finish. But it wasn't going to be easy. Not with the building fighting back. I poured the gasoline across the floor, around the altar, around the symbols scratched into the walls. The liquid pooled around the old books, the artifacts that were meant to hold power, the cursed relics that had kept their malevolent hold on this place for so long. My hands shook as I splashed more fuel over the wood and metal, and I could hear the distant sound of chanting. Low, guttural. Liam. He was trying to finish the summoning. I moved to the door, but then I heard it. The sound of a door slamming open somewhere deeper in the building. The heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. My heart pounded. He knew. He must have known. I turned back to the altar. The matchbox in my hand felt heavy, like the weight of the world. I struck a match, my thumb sliding along the rough side, the sulphurous smell cutting through the air. It lit in an instant, and the flame danced in the dim light of the basement. Then I heard it. Liam's voice, soft but cruel. You don't understand, Alex. You can't stop it. His voice was closer now, right behind me, but I didn't dare turn around. I couldn't afford the distraction. My eyes stayed focused on the flame. The match flickered. I stepped back, taking a breath, and threw it onto the trail of gasoline. The fire spread faster than I expected. Flames shot up along the walls, licking the ceiling. A sound like a low scream filled the air, rising from the very walls of the museum. The heat burned my skin, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The fire was the only thing standing between me and whatever was coming. Then I heard the scraping sound, something dragging across the floor. The air seemed to get thicker, and for a moment, I thought I could feel fingers brushing my neck. I wasn't alone anymore. It was him. Stop it, Liam hissed from behind me. I could hear the grin in his voice, sick and twisted. You don't know what you're doing. You've only scratched the surface. I turned slowly. The firelight flickered across his face, casting deep shadows in the hollows of his cheeks. His eyes gleamed in the glow, wide and unblinking. You think this is the end? He asked. This isn't the end, Alex. This is just the beginning. I didn't wait for him to finish. I didn't need to hear any more. I turned and ran, the flames licking at my heels, my heart racing in my chest. The museum was a labyrinth, twisting and shifting like it was alive. The walls groaned, the floors creaked, as though the building was trying to hold on to the ancient secrets buried deep within it. I heard footsteps behind me, but this time it wasn't Liam. This was something else, something larger, something that wanted me. I reached the door, slamming it behind me, but I could still hear the distant, guttural noises that grew louder with every step I took. The fire was spreading. There was no turning back now. I had to make it out. The building seemed to shift beneath me, pulling at my legs as if it were trying to swallow me whole. The smoke made it hard to see, but I pushed forward, one hand on the wall, desperate for any sort of direction. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood, of old paper, of the essence of things long forgotten. I couldn't let it consume me. Then I saw it. The exit. The front doors, once pristine and welcoming, now cracked and smoldering. The light from the fire cast long shadows across the floor as I stumbled forward, feeling the heat on my skin, the breath of the flames hot on my back. The museum was alive, burning, but not dying. I reached the doors. I grabbed the handle. My fingers slipped. I yanked harder. The door creaked. It opened. For a moment, the world outside felt too quiet, too still. Then, a blast of heat hit me, and I saw the flames, blazing higher than the building itself, a monstrous inferno swallowing the museum whole. I was free. But Liam? I didn't know. I didn't care. I collapsed outside the building, my hands shaking. The fire illuminated the entire landscape, making the trees seem like shadows, the sky like a dark bruise. The smoke billowed into the night, curling up into the heavens. The museum was burning. It was all burning. And maybe, just maybe, I had stopped it. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I turned away, dragging my feet through the dirt. But something in my jacket pocket stopped me. A small piece of paper, folded, stained. I unfolded it slowly. Night shift starts again soon. Same rules. New location. The fire wasn't the end. It had only been the beginning. I wake up to the harsh blare of fluorescent lights and the sterile scent of antiseptic. My head aches, and the soft beeping of monitors is the only sound that feels familiar. I blink, trying to focus on the room around me. White walls, a small window, and the sterile hospital bed I'm lying in. The kind of room you never want to wake up in. I push myself upright, groaning, trying to remember what happened. The fire, the smoke, the crumbling walls of the museum. The image of Liam's face, twisted and almost not human, still haunts me. I shake my head, desperate to clear the fog, but nothing makes sense. My hands tremble as I touch the bandages wrapped around my arms. They sting, and my fingers ache with every movement, like they've been burned into submission. The door opens, and a nurse steps in. She's young, with too much makeup and a forced smile. She asks me the usual questions: my name, date, where I am. I answer mechanically, but her voice feels distant, almost as if I'm hearing her from underwater. "You're lucky to be alive," she says, checking my vitals. The fire. It was a miracle anyone made it out. I nod, even though I'm not sure I believe in miracles anymore. "Do you remember what happened?" "The fire, I mean." I hesitate. I could tell her the truth, the museum, the rules, the darkness that came alive beneath the floors. But something inside me tells me that explaining it all, even in a place like this, would only get me labeled as insane. Or worse, they'd throw me in some locked room for my own safety. And I couldn't do that. Not after everything I saw. Not after everything I've done. I don't remember much, I say, and my voice sounds wrong, like it's been coated in ash. She nods, scribbling something on her clipboard. "Well, the fire was contained quickly. The building is, well, what's left of it is being assessed." She hesitates, glancing at the door. "I'm afraid we've lost some evidence in the process. But you should be grateful, Mr. Reyes. You're one of the lucky ones." "Lucky? Yeah, I feel so damn lucky." The nurse leaves, and I'm left alone with my thoughts. The sterile hospital room feels colder now. The silence presses in on me, like it's suffocating me. The walls seem to pulse with a distant hum. The same eerie thrum I felt in the museum when the lights flickered and the floor seemed to breathe beneath my feet. I reach for the bedside table, hoping for something to distract me. Maybe a phone, maybe a book, but my fingers brush something else. Something I didn't notice before. A small envelope. It's unmarked, the edges torn as if someone had opened it and quickly resealed it. I tear it open, my heart suddenly racing. Inside, there's a single folded piece of paper. I unfold it slowly, my eyes scanning the familiar, jagged handwriting. Night shift starts again soon. Same rules. New location. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I blink, reading it again. Same rules. New location. I can't help but laugh. A bitter, hollow sound that echoes in the quiet room. It's not over. Not by a long shot. I've been through hell, fought things I still can't explain, and yet here I am, alive and still bound to the madness. I clutch the paper in my hand, the truth settling like a stone in my stomach. The nightmare isn't over. It never was. I'm not free. I'm just moving to the next place, the next shift, the next set of rules. And I don't know if I'll survive it. But I can't let go now. Not after everything I've seen. I get out of bed, the floor cold beneath my feet. The pain in my body feels distant, secondary to the terror gnawing at my insides. I've been given a second chance. But what does that even mean when there's no escaping what's coming for me? I take one last look at the envelope, feeling the weight of it in my hand. It's a cruel joke, a never-ending cycle, and it's mine to bear. As I walk toward the door, the weight of the paper burning a hole in my pocket, I know that the night shift never ends. It just begins again.